Y'all, this creepy story is on a whole other level. This woman tells the story from when she was a teenager in the 80s, and this occurred in Ohio. She was living with her parents in Columbus. And she says, "I don't know the first time he saw me, but the first time I saw him was through my kitchen window." She said it was late at night and she was getting a glass of water, and she had one of those pop-out greenhouse style windows. All the lights were off, and she looked out the window and saw a figure of a man standing facing her direction. So she froze for a moment and then turned around and went back to her bedroom as though nothing had happened. I could not do that. She says she knows that it seems crazy that she didn't react, but she said it wasn't the first time that she felt like someone was watching her, which to me is all the more reason to freak out about it. She mentioned that for a few weeks before this happened, she said she just had this inner knowing that someone was outside her bedroom window. But she mentioned that her backyard backed up onto a park, so there were people sort of always passing through. So there were a lot of chances that strange people might be kind of near her back window. But she said for weeks, she would wake up in the middle of the night with a strong sense that someone was out there watching in on her. But it was summertime and it was hot, so her windows were open. She did mention that she had blinds and screened for the bugs, but there was very much an easy way for somebody to get in. She said a few of the times that she did wake up feeling like this, she started to hear the sound of someone or something touching the screen and like running their fingers across the mesh. And it was to the point where this was happening 2 or 3 times a week. And a few times she did get the courage to sort of run across to her parents' room and wake them up and tell them. But by the time that they would go check, nothing would be there. And she said they did not believe her, which that's really shitty. She said that this had been happening so frequently and she'd never actually been able to see anything, so that when the night did come that she saw the figure outside the kitchen window, she was almost relieved because at least it validated that she wasn't imagining it. She said it would go on for months, and then there were times when it had snowed, and then footprints would be up to her window. And this time her parents couldn't deny it, so they sort of believed her at this point, but didn't really do much. And then she's like, "Remember, it was the 80s. I'm sorry, I don't care what year it is." What? And then she said one night it all came to a head when she and a couple friends were at her house getting ready to go out. But her parents were out to dinner and they had the house to themselves. One of the blinds were all the way up, and she turned around and was met face to face right there up in the window. He was standing there just staring in at the girls. Said he was terrifying looking and he had bright orange dyed hair. So she screams along with all of her friends, and they all ran into the bathroom, which didn't have any windows looking to the outside. She said then eventually she gathered up enough courage to run to the kitchen to call 911 because remember, no cell phone. So the police get there about the same time the parents got home, and of course there's nobody in sight. And the police basically accused her and all her friends of drinking and making the whole thing up. Real good job. So a couple weeks later, she notices a headline on the local newspaper. She was stopped dead in her tracks and her blood ran cold. That creepy orange-haired man's face was right up front and center on the newspaper, and the article said he had attacked 2 teenage girls at a gas station and ended up unaliving them. And during the struggle, when the police were trying to detain him, they ended up having to unalive him. She said she can't really remember all the details anymore, and she hasn't been able to locate the article since, but she does feel a sense of relief that there's no way he'll be coming back, and just can't get over the fact that that could have been her countless times. Sometimes human beings are actually way creepier and scarier than the paranormal. In fact, I feel like every time. All right, you know what to do. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you have a creepy story of your own, I would love to hear it. And if you are new here, you gotta follow for more creepy story time.
I grew up in the Appalachian Mountains, and my grandmother was the director of the Senior Citizen Center where I'm from. So when I was young, I spent a lot of time there with her, and especially late at night when she would be closing. I'd go after school, the bus would drop me off. This one night, it was probably, well, it closed at 5 o'clock, so it was probably right around 5 o'clock. I was upstairs by myself, and if you've ever seen the movie Rose Red, this place reminded me of Rose Red, because it was just a really big building. It was old. It was donated by this very wealthy lady, and upstairs there was this library. I know back in the day when we used to have libraries and everything wasn't on Wikipedia. I was upstairs by myself in the library right around closing time. It was just me and my grandmother there. And then I'm probably not reading a book because I don't like to read. I was probably just goofing off. Well, I start hearing these sound like a conversation between two people outside in the main area, because it was a big main area that had like shuffleboard there, and then the library was off to the side, and there was a doorway. The door wasn't closed, but I heard two people having a conversation. I was like, that's weird. I thought everybody was gone. It's late at night. And I was like, okay, whatever. And then they just keep having a conversation. I walk out and there's nobody there. Not a single soul in sight. Nobody. I was probably in my young teens at this point, and it's one of the first times I've heard something like that. So I walk downstairs to my grandmother and I'm like, hey, I just heard some people upstairs talking. Are you sure everybody's gone? And she's like, there's not been anybody in here for a long time. What are you talking about? Well, obviously that scared me. And growing up in the Appalachian Mountains, that was one of many things that happened to me, but that was probably one of the first. And I think my grandmother thought I was crazy. And, you know, being in a senior citizens area, that is somewhere that people pass away more often, I guess, because of the age group that is visiting a senior citizen center. But I never went to that library after dark by myself again. I wouldn't go up there, and every time I think about it, I think of Rose Red. And if you've never watched that movie, it's one of the best movies.
A friend who we're just going to call Danny emailed us to tell us about this weird experience that she had. She says that it's been years and she still has no idea what this was. But 2 years ago, Danny and her friend are driving on the highway, and in front of them is this very distinct red Toyota Corolla. It has like distinct bumper stickers, this big scratch on the back. It's just the type of vehicle that's going to stand out in a crowd, if that makes sense. So as they're driving behind this red Toyota Corolla that's very distinct that they both remember, they remember this Toyota Corolla spinning out. They said that they were super lucky because it actually just missed them, but it ended up spinning out. It spun to the other side of the highway because there was not a median on where the car began to spun out, and it actually ran into an oil truck and kaboom. Like, this was not the sort of accident that you walk away from. They were like 100%. Now, Danny said that this all happened really fast. She didn't have her phone out. She didn't get a video of anything. They just kind of kept driving because there was nothing that they could do. And they said that that evening, they kind of expected to see something on the news about this accident, but there was nothing. A couple of days after the accident, her friend calls her freaking out. Her friend works at a grocery store, and it's one of the stores where they offer to carry your things to your car for you. So the friend is on the phone with Danny and is like, somebody came in. Something about them was just not right. She said that he described them as looking cartoonish. Only purchased a couple of things, but as per requirement for the job, Danny's friend asked this person, do you want me to help you carry your stuff out to your car? And this guy was like, yeah. But Danny's friend described the guy as looking cartoonish, looked to be in about his 20s. And even though this guy was perfectly capable of carrying out just these couple of things that he had purchased, did request that it be carried to his car. So Danny's friend grabs the bags, goes to walk outside. They're walking towards the car. The guy walks up to a red Toyota Corolla. Danny's friend walks closer. He is looking at this Toyota Corolla, puts the things in the trunk, shuts the trunk, kind of steps back, looks at it, and realizes same color, same year, exact same bumper stickers, scratch in the exact same spot. So at this point, Danny's friend is like, that's weird, and just kind of backs away and slowly turns to where the car is not within like line of sight, not even in the peripherals, just kind of like turns around. As he makes like a full circle and comes back to where the car should be parked, the car has vanished and the driver has also vanished, not there. From where Danny's friend was standing, he could see both exits from the parking lot and looked all over the place, did not see the Toyota Corolla, could not find it in the parking lot, did not see it driving down the road, even though there was no way in the span of time that he just turned around that this Toyota Corolla could have gotten that far away. Basically, this guy who looked off just vanished, seemingly into thin air. But Danny says that this is one of those things that she always thinks about because there is no explanation for it. They know what they saw that day. The Toyota Corolla that was in front of them that got into the accident was very distinct, with distinct bumper stickers and like a distinct scratch that they both noted. And then when Danny's friend went to put these bags in this guy's car, it was the same car, which could be explained away. But Danny says what freaks her out about it is that it just vanished. Like it was never there. She says that it has been years. She still thinks about this daily, has no explanation, does not know what they experienced, doesn't understand why, if the accident was that bad, it wasn't covered on any news stations, has zero explanation for it. Danny was hoping that I would share and that everybody could leave their thoughts in the comments. And we do also accept logical explanations here, so please don't feel shy. Because sometimes all you need is a logical explanation to make yourself feel better and to realize, like, okay, makes sense. But paranormal explanations are also accepted. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.
I probably should be doing my hair right now, but I like y'all too much, so story time. Boom, boom, it's story time. Boom, boom, paranormal Chicago active with Cat G. Hey, y'all, hey, let's do a recap. We got the fourth flower. It's only one flower left, but we running into some issues. The problem is a werecat, aka Miss Pussin' Bitch. She thought shit was sweet and she was finna jump me and Phoenix and Papa, but it ain't turned out how she. You cannot defeat a light demon with light energy. It only makes them stronger. We get through the first little battle of the werecats and Miss Evangeline come through on a two-way mirror. She tell us that we gotta find a dagger. Come to find out that the dagger actually belonged to Phoenix's father. Phoenix's father is a very, 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 very powerful Phoenix. He's so powerful that he actually lives in the sun. Papa tried to use the dagger in order to pierce the force field that's around the flower, but that didn't work. I moved in to try to help him, and before Miss Evangeline could warn me, I touched the flower and all hell broke loose. You caught up? Okay. Okay, so boom. I touched this dagger and fire everywhere from my fingertips all the way through my arm, radiating through my body, and by the time it reaches my third eye, baby, I'll blank out. I don't know where I am, and I can't open up my eyes because of the light that's around me. You know how, like, you got your eyes closed and it's a super bright light and you try to open them and all you see is white and you close them back and then now all you see is white again? Yeah, that's where I'm. I can't feel nothing. I can't hear nothing. It is just straight me suspended in air. I hear a muffled voice. It's a woman. She say, "Little girl, what you do?" Why I gotta be the one who did something? First of all, I wasn't even supposed to be a part of this operation. I got sucked into some shit and now I'm being blamed for something. Are you serious right now? The voice gets a laugh at, but it's like, it's a warm laugh. It's a familiar laugh. And when it finally registered to me whose laugh it is, now my heart is in my throat. The voice chuckle again and say, "Gal, if you don't get up out that damn clay," now my eyes pop open. All I see is thick, lush green leaves. And then the breeze kick in and I hear a wind. I close my eyes again and I take a deep breath of the wind because it smells like home. Where is home? South Carolina. If you ever been to South Carolina, a lot of it sits on top of a natural red clay deposit. And if you know anything about red clay, it has a very distinctive smell, especially when it gets wet from the rain. My heart is in my throat because I know that I am laying in the front yard of my great-grandmother's house. I have not seen this woman since 2 days before she died. Her spirit literally came and visited me. I sit straight up and I look over towards where the front porch would be, and there she is, sitting on her front porch in her rocking chair, just smiling. My great-grandmother was a great woman. Like, this woman literally had preachers and priests, like literal spiritual leaders from different religions coming to talk to her, to ask her for advice, to ask her for guidance. That's how much of a good person my great-grandmother was. It's a lot of people who look at me and be like, "Cat can't just be completely black." You're right, I'm not. I'm actually black and Native American, thanks to my great-grandmother. Her mother was a black woman who was a slave and also a spiritual healer. Her father, full-blown Native American and the son of a shaman. When I say power running through my veins, it's in my blood. I ain't had no damn choice coming out being a star child. I digress. Back to my granny sitting on her. I run over to her, and as I normally do, I always kneel in front of her. She puts her hand on the top of my head and say, "Little girl, what you doing here?" She say, "Girl, I wasn't supposed to see you for another 85 years. What you doing here?" Am I dead? She pat my head again. She say, "Girl, what you do? What you do?" I woke up. I woke up. That's what I did. Lily came to the house. She the one who drugged me out. I don't even think that I was supposed to be a part of this. How did I? Girl, hold on. I'm literally freaking the fuck out because, hello? Are you here to take me to the motherfucking gates? Wait a minute. She said, "Nope, that's not how you got here. What's in your heart?" She put a finger on my heart, and it was like all my deepest, darkest secrets just started playing on the walls around us. At this point in my life, I have done a lot. I've been put through a lot. I have been hurting a lot. And baby, I'm fucking tired. I ain't asked for none of this shit. And all the women in my life are gone. My mama, my grandmama, my great-grandma. All of y'all is up there. So why the fuck am I still here? Then that woman gonna sit up here and tell me something that I didn't want to hear. The water blessed you. Oh, she chose you. I didn't want to be chosen. There's a saying that sirens will come and steal you from the land for two reasons. One, because you finna be their next meal, or two is because they finna turn you into one of them. And that's what the fuck happened to me. Little itty bitty old pond on the side of our motherfucking property. This pond ain't no more than a motherfucking foot deep. So tell me how the fuck I got dragged under the damn water. Went missing for 2 days. After they finished programming my ass on the 3rd day, they sent me the fuck back. My aunties and my uncles who didn't know no better, they beat the fuck out of me. They couldn't figure out what the hell I was. Let me tell you something. I'm one of those kids who grew up in the South for real, and learned how to rough it, baby. I am at home by the water and the trees. Leave me alone. I'm gone for days. They thought my ass ran the fuck off. I didn't. The only person who understood was my grandma and my great-grandma. When my mama found out, she was fucking livid. Didn't I tell y'all to keep her away from the fucking water down there? Bless my mama heart and all her parts. She really just wanted me to have a normal childhood. But the way that my bloodline is set up, I had no choice. But back to my great grandma in this conversation. So she's seeing all my deepest, darkest secrets, and she see how tired I am, and she like, girl, you don't know that the Holy Mother only blesses the strongest ones. You feel tired and weak, but you not, girl. You got to stand up. And if I don't want to, baby, the way my great grandma face went straight, she said, excuse me? What if I don't want to be strong anymore? She said, let me ask you something, baby girl. If the garbage man don't come pick up trash, what's going to happen? The street going to get overran with trash? Oh, okay. So if the demon slayer don't slay the demons, then what's going to happen? The earth is going to get overrun with dark energy and demons. She say, and what's your job? I'm thinking to myself, something that I ain't asked for. Honey, let me tell you something. Don't nothing strike fear in me like seeing my great grandma with a braided switch. Oh Lord, save me, Lord, save. Where'd she even get the fucking switch from, Lord? Did you just gave her a tool to beat me? It ain't fair. It's not fair. I'm already dying and you want me to get beat too? That woman got up close to my face and said, think it again, I dare you. I don't want no smoke with your big homie. Girl, you got it. You said take my little ass and do my job. All right, I heard you. My great grandma stood up, put her hand back on my head again. She said, girl, stop pretending like you weak and use that damn power in your blood. She walking back towards the front door. My heart is in my throat because this is the first time I seen my great grandma in a long time. I don't want her to leave. She opened up the front door and I see every family member who passed away. They all standing there in the front room, and I'm like, bro, just let me come home. Please, just let me come home. Please let me come. Do you know all them bastards said at the same time, go home, Roger, and slammed the front door in my fucking face? I'm catapulted back into the real world, into my body, confused and mad as fuck, because how the fuck you just pulled a me on me? You won't tell me to fucking go home, Roger. How dare you? But also at the same time, bitch, I just died. Hold on! That means I'm down to like 7 lives! I can't even focus on what the hell just happened in the spirit realm, because in this realm, all hell is breaking. Puss and bitch minions is every motherfucker. Papa got his demons coming out of his shadows left and fucking Phoenix sitting up here spinning and whipping and shit looking like a motherfucking tornado on fire. Anxiety is welling up in me to the point where I feel like I'm finna to explode. I'm low-key terrified because I can't fucking breathe, and I know what happened the last time I felt like this. The last time I felt like this, baby, you'll find out in the next part.
I got an email from a girl who said that she played with a Ouija board when she was younger and got a D-word attachment that threatened to unalive her. So when Cassie was 12 years old, she was unfortunately dealing with the loss of her grandmother. Her grandmother had just passed away and she was incredibly close with her grandmother. So Cassie ends up going to school and she ends up meeting this girl named Maria. Maria's in her same class, and her and Maria become close. They become friends. Now, they got close enough to where Cassie felt comfortable enough to tell her about her grandmother, about losing her grandmother, and about how much it affected her. She also told her that she wishes that she could talk to her grandmother. She wishes that she could see her again and that she really missed her. So Maria's response to this is that her and her mother, Maria and her mother, play a game all the time, and that this could potentially help Cassie, and that if Cassie wants to play the game too, that she can come over to her house and play the game with her. And Maria tells her, you know, when you play this game, you're going to be able to talk to your grandmother. So at this point, Cassie is like, yeah, I want to play this game. You know, she really misses her grandmother, and playing this game sounds really good to her. So Cassie ends up going over to Maria's house. Go over to Maria's house, and Maria's like, okay, we're going to go into the bathroom and we're going to light a candle. And so that's what they do. They go into the bathroom, they light a candle. Maria then lays out a Ouija board. Now, Cassie at this time doesn't know what a Ouija board is, so she doesn't know that it is a Ouija board and what she's doing, really. They start playing. They start spinning the planchette around for a minute first. I've never heard of that before, but that's what they started doing. Then Maria starts asking the board some questions, and the board is responding. After a little bit of Maria asking these questions, Maria then looks at Cassie and says, Cassie, do you want to ask it any questions? Cassie's like, yeah, I want to ask it about my grandmother. So the first thing that she asks is, what is my grandmother's name? Planchette spells out that the grandmother's name starts with an A, which this is true. I'm not going to tell you what her grandmother's name was, but it started with an A. As soon as Cassie sees this, she's like, oh my God. So she starts asking it more questions. So she says, Grandma, do you miss me? Grandma, I love you. Do you know that? And then the last question that she asks her is, Grandma, why didn't you say goodbye? Why did you just leave me like that? Why did you have to leave me? Well, before the board can even answer this question, someone busts into the bathroom. She didn't say who it was, but she said that someone busted in the bathroom and was like, what are you doing? Like, you need to stop right now. I'm assuming it wasn't Maria's mother, because Maria's mother knows that she was playing with the Ouija board. So it essentially stopped them from what they were doing, and they weren't able to say goodbye to the Ouija board. So at this point, she has to go home. So she goes home, she eats dinner, she does her homework, she takes a bath, and then she just goes to bed. So she gets in bed, and she's just laying there for a little bit, and everything's normal at first, until she starts to hear something. She starts to hear a voice, and she can't make out what it's saying at first, and then she realizes that it's saying, Cassie, we've been waiting for you. Now, this is coming from like the corner of her bedroom, and she is freaked out. She doesn't know what to do. So she's just laying there, frozen in fear. She tries to ignore it at this point because she doesn't really know what it is. She's only 12 years old. So she's like, okay, my mind is playing tricks on me. That's the only way I think she could cope with it. As she's deciding that she's going to ignore this, something floods into her head, and she remembers something. She remembers that when she was a baby, when her mother was pregnant, her mother fell down a manhole, and she broke her arms and her legs. And so Cassie essentially was not supposed to be born in the first place. She was supposed to be deleted. For some reason, in her 12-year-old mind, she's thinking that maybe this is spirits talking to her, telling her that, you know, you're not supposed to be here. You weren't even supposed to be alive right now, and we've been waiting for you. That's what's going on in her head. So that's terrifying. After this, she is tossing and turning. She cannot go to sleep. And finally, she does fall asleep, and she wakes up the next day, and she goes up to her friend Maria, and she's like, listen, Maria, what is going on with me? I'm hearing voices call my name at night. I don't like this. This is really scaring me. How can I make this stop? And apparently all this little girl said was, it's nothing. Don't worry about it. It'll stop happening on its own. I do this all the time. You know, you're going to be fine. So Cassie is like, okay, whatever. What is she going to do? Right? So later on that day, she goes home, she eats, she does her homework, she takes a bath, and she goes to bed. Well, as she's in bed trying to sleep, she notices something. It smells in her room. Like, it smells really bad, and she doesn't know what it smells like, but it just smells like crap. Then she hears that voice again, except for this time it says that it's going to unalive her. So terrified, she looks in the corner of her room, and she sees this dark figure, and it's like an outline, a shadow of a person. She can't see any details at all, not its eyes and not its face, nothing, only that it has arms, feet, and a head. That's what she's seeing. She said at this point that she just started crying because she was so terrified, and she just laid in bed and put the covers over her face and just laid there while this thing was telling her that it was going to unalive her. So the next day she goes to school, and she is absolutely drained, completely drained, and all of her teachers are noticing, everybody is noticing. And the weird thing is that Maria is not at school. Everybody is asking her if she is okay, and she's just lying to them and telling them that she's okay when really she doesn't feel okay. So later on that night, she does the same routine. She goes to bed, except for this time it got worse. So the third night, she goes to bed and she's trying to fall asleep when suddenly she feels something touching her, and then it goes from touching her to scratching her. Now, she does say that she doesn't have any pictures of this, because this was 1989. So at this point, she has just had enough. So she finally gets up and she goes and tells her mom what's going on. And she's like, listen, I'm terrified. I did this. I know it was wrong, but I did it. And her mom is like, what were you thinking? I cannot believe that you did that. You know that we are a God-fearing family. That is not what we do in this household. But you know what? We're going to fix it. Don't worry about it. Come with me. So she goes with her mom, and her mom grabs a cross and she puts it in her lap. And her mom just starts to pray for her. Said that when her mom was praying for her, that her exact words were, it felt like hell was raining down on me. Apparently she was incredibly uncomfortable. It did not feel good at all. But as soon as her mother was finished, whatever portal this was or whatever D word this was, it left or it closed because nothing ever happened again. One interesting part of the story though is she goes to school the next day after this, and that girl Maria still isn't there. That girl Maria never showed up to school ever again. Now she does say that she has been haunted since she was little, and that when she got older, now today, that she still is haunted to this day, but that God has always helped her through it, and that she knows that if anything ever comes her way, that she is going to be okay because God will help her through. And if you stayed for this long, I do have a bonus part of the story. I didn't put it in the story because it was right in the middle of the story and it didn't really fit together with the story. Like, she kind of just threw it in there. But so when right after her grandmother passed away, her grandmother actually visited her. She came to her in the same dress that she was buried in, which was a pink dress. And she just basically said to her, listen, I'm so sorry I didn't get to say goodbye to you. I love you. And then she disappeared. And she said that after this happened to her, she was so devastated that she literally felt like she was going to die for days. She was absolutely devastated. Her grandmother was her favorite grandmother. She adored her. And so this kind of paints a picture for you of how devastated she was when her grandmother passed away. So what do you guys think about this story? I think it's very weird that that little girl Maria came to that school, then found out that she was devastated about her grandmother, and then put her through all of this. It almost sounds to me like she was placed there to prey on her grief somehow, especially since she never showed up to school again. I don't know if a child can do that, but maybe it wasn't a child, and maybe she was the only one who could see her. I don't know. That would be a question that I would have. Like, did other people see Maria? That I'm assuming that your teacher saw her, that she was actually a girl. I'm wondering, that would be a question that I have. I guess she did go to her house, so that may be a silly theory, but it does sound to me like this little girl in some way was sent to her to prey on her. Maybe in some way, shape, or form, there was some type of D word behind that little girl, like spiritually kind of guiding her towards Cassie in order to inflict this pain on her. But I don't know, tell me what you guys think. Any comments, suggestions, or questions that you have, drop them below. I would love to hear what you guys think about this story, but as always, please be respectful.
The Karak Highway, or the KL Karak Expressway, cuts through the wilderness of the Titiwangsa Mountains. It's about 60 kilometers long and a major route out of KL, Kuala Lumpur, to the east. So during the day, it's just a road, but at night, it feels like the highway changes personality. The air gets colder, the fog rolls in, so thick that your headlights can't light the way ahead. The trees press close on both sides, and the canopy swallows the sky. The Titiwangsa Mountains aren't just mountains. For the Orang Asli, the original people who lived here for 8,000 years, the mountains were alive, inhabited. They called the spirits Ye. Spirit guides who lived in the peaks, the rivers, the trees, who communicated through dreams, who kept the balance between humans and the land. And there were others, the Penungu, guardian spirits of specific places, caves, forests, mountains, and they were evil, not originally, but they had rules. In Malaysian folklore, when the delicate line between the human world and the spirit world is crossed, when you trespass into their living spaces, a conflict ensues. Some say the old ways required offerings before you broke ground on sacred land. Some say the spirits needed to be asked. In the 1970s, when they blasted a tunnel through this mountain, when they paved over forest that had stood for 130 million years, did anyone ask permission? The construction workers who built this highway reported strange things. Equipment failures, workers who refused to return, accidents with no explanation. But the government needed the road, so they finished the highway, opened into traffic. And the accidents began almost immediately. And at first, they were explainable, but the frequency was strange. And then came February 28th, 1990, the night Karak earned its reputation. It happened at kilometer 30.9. An express bus was descending a hill, fully loaded with passengers. The driver pressed the brakes. Nothing. Brake failure. And this happened on a downhill slope with a bus full of people. It struck 2 cars first, sent them spinning, and then it collided head-on with a truck. But this wasn't just any truck. It was an FRU vehicle, Federal Reserve Unit, riot police. 11 officers were inside. They were from Troop 4B on their way from the police training center in Kuala Lumpur to Kuala Terengganu. They never made it. The impact was so violent that the FRU truck was driven beneath the bus. But it wasn't over. A fuel tanker was coming up behind them. The tanker slammed into the pile. And then the chain reaction began. A lorry, 2 taxis, 6 cars, 12 vehicles in total. When it finally stopped, when the last vehicle came to rest, 17 people were dead. Police called it one of the worst road disasters since 1970. It remains the worst highway disaster in Malaysian history since the Karak Highway opened to traffic in 1979. And after the worst tragedies, that's when the stories get louder. And here's the thing about Penunggu spirits. They tend to congregate in places where death is frequent. And with each death, the place grows darker. The spirits multiply. The original guardians of the mountain are now joined by every soul who died screaming on this asphalt. Some say those souls are scattered, that when you die in terror, sudden, confused, not understanding what happened, your soul fragments, pieces of you left behind on the road. Now we need to talk about the one thing people report seeing the most. A set of headlights, a car, a bright yellow Volkswagen Beetle. The story always begins the same way. It's late, past midnight, the road is quieter than it should be. Your headlights cut through fog in short, dark tunnels. And then you see it, a slow-moving car in your lane, a vintage yellow Beetle. It's not swerving, it's not broken down. It's just going a little too slow, like it's forcing you to hit your brakes. And most drivers do what anyone would do. They get annoyed, they overtake, they move into the next lane, they pass it. But then when they glance sideways, just to throw a quick angry glare at the driver, they're hit with a sudden realization that makes them keep driving. Once they overtake it, the yellow Beetle appears in front of them again. People call it the infinite loop. You speed up, it's there. You slow down, it matches your speed. And no matter what you do, it doesn't stay behind you. That car is leading you. Because some versions of the story say it isn't just reappearing. It's trying to pull you deeper into Karak. Locals say, don't overtake it, because once you pass it, you feel the urge to look inside, to check who's driving. And people who take that glance swear they see one of 2 things. Either there is no one behind the wheel, an empty driver's seat, or there is someone, but the driver doesn't look right. The silhouette that doesn't match the posture of a living person. Some say it belongs to a husband who died on that highway, chasing his wife, chasing betrayal, chasing the last conversation he never got to finish. Some say it was a family that never made it home, and some link it to the 1990 pileup accident. But the yellow Beetle isn't the only thing people see on Karak. there are other encounters. And what's strange is how specific they are. Drivers report seeing a motorcyclist dressed entirely in black. He rides alongside cars. At first, people think it's just another rider, but then they notice something wrong. When they speed up, he keeps pace, effortlessly. One driver reported seeing him on her way back from Genting. She was doing 90, and this man appeared next to her. She said when she turned her head, she could see through the visor, and there was nothing inside the helmet.
Let's read a couple scary stories that were sent to us. I had just moved back to Arizona. It was summertime and I was excited to finally have my own apartment. One of my old friends from Colorado wanted to come visit me, so I let him, and I was so excited and started planning things for us to do while he was in town. He got to my apartment early in the morning, and we wasted no time and immediately went to the mountains for an early morning hike in the beautiful Arizona desert. We pull up to this desolate spot I had hiked many times. We got out of his Jeep and started our adventure. It was a totally normal morning. Sun was out and very bright, and the weather was perfect. When we got to the bottom of the mountain, about to hike up, we heard a loud, screechy noise, and I won't lie, it scared the shit out of both of us. We both whipped around and noticed a random for sale sign. It was all rusted and looked like it had been there for a while. We brushed it off and kept going. As we continued on up the mountain, still not even a quarter of the way up, we both hear a faint, "Help me," from the distance. We immediately stopped in our tracks and looked at each other like, what the hell was that? Then we heard it again, "Help me." Very faint and sounded very far away. We looked around thinking someone may have needed our help, when we realized the yells for help were coming from the top of the mountain. The for sale sign started screeching again, but this time faster, which was terrifying because it wasn't even windy. The cries for help continued, but this time more disoriented. It sounded like it was coming from the top of the mountain, then to our left, then to our right, when suddenly cries for help were surrounding us, all while the for sale sign was still going crazy. We noped out of there real quick, and as we drove off, we were freaking out. What just happened? This memory still scares me, especially when I think about where or what that voice was coming from. Did we leave someone at the top of the mountain who really needed our help? Or did we possibly dodge death? These are the questions that still haunt me. Listen, as somebody who is from Arizona, it's beautiful, okay? It's the most beautiful place I've ever been, but there is scary shit out there. To start off, ever since I was little, me, my parents, and my older sister thought we lived in a haunted house. One of my parents' friends, who was a medium, told my mom she had a deceased family member attached to her. A string of encounters would go on from here. Shadow figures, my dog seeing something, voices, even sometimes a breath right in your ear. But strangely, these things would only happen to me and my sister. All of this made me a strong believer of the paranormal. About 4 years ago, we moved cities, and for the first year, not a thing happened until I moved into my own place. It's a small, elevated house with wooden floors, so when you walk, it echoes under the house. Sometimes at night, you can hear quick barefoot steps throughout the house. Things disappear and reappear in the most obvious places. I've learned to brush this off. Now, about a month ago, I house sat for one of my friends and their parents. They lived in the town over, and it was only for 3 days. The town we live in is one of the safest places, the crime rate almost zero. The first day I was alone and it was completely fine. The second day I called my friend and her boyfriend over. We made food and laughed, and when it was time to sleep, me and my friend slept in the room I was staying in, and her boyfriend was in the other guest room. The next night it was only me and my friend. We decided we were going to pull an all-nighter as we had a history exam the next day, so we were planning on studying all night. We were sitting at the kitchen table, and as we were studying, to our left, there is a hallway to the parents' room, and we started hearing footsteps down that hallway. We obviously got freaked out and went to one of the bedrooms and closed the door. We stood by the door and pressed our ears against it, and we could hear faint walking throughout the house. We started calling my brother, and he was in the town over. Eventually, I opened the door to go look, and there is a small hallway in front of the room leading into the room. Something sprinted towards me, and I couldn't see it, but I could hear it, so I slammed the door. About 20 minutes later, we decided we are going to ignore it and go back to the kitchen and study. I go to the bathroom first, and as I'm sitting there, outside the bathroom window, I hear someone kicking a bucket twice. I called my friend, and we looked out the window. No one, no bucket. Finally, we grab a flashlight and go to every room and look out the windows to see if we can see something. The last room was a second guest room, and in that room, there is a dresser at the end of the bed against the wall. And as I walk past it, I point out the only thing on the dresser, a pair of children's pink bloody underwear. I don't know what I thought, but we didn't talk about it again. The next day we went home, and about 3 days later, the owner of the house messaged me, asking about the underwear, as it is not any of theirs. I panicked. That family is fully devoted to Christ, and there is no reason for this stuff to be happening in that house. I am starting to think that it isn't my mom with the attachment. It's me. I would have to agree with that. It's probably you, from what it sounds like. And honestly, like the family being devoted to Christ, devoted, am I saying that right? I don't know. I feel like sometimes those are the people that the evil tries to go for. Like, have you seen the movie Emily Rose? She was a total Christian, very religious, and she still was possessed by a demon. But yeah, that's really creepy, especially hearing like the bare feet running in the house. No.
In Mexico, they have something called the Bruja. Now, the Bruja is a Spanish version of a witch. In Latino culture, right, the Bruja is said to be this older woman who becomes so engulfed with evil, she turns into this hideous creature. Now, the Bruja is often seen flying around the night sky. She will try and trick you and lure you out to where she's at. They often say you will see her appear as a ball of light. She will seem far away, and you will think she's moving away from you. But in reality, she's actually coming closer, coming to take you away. She's also considered to be a shapeshifter. She can appear as any kind of animal, or a loved one, a family member. But a lot of the sightings occur in central Mexico. There was this man named Santos. When Santos was a young boy, he grew up with his mother and his brothers in this small little mountain town. He said he used to sleep in this small little bedroom, and across from him was his brother's bed. Well, this particular night, he falls asleep, and he awakes to the sound of his brother talking. And as he slowly gets up out of bed, he's like, "What are you talking about? Like, what do you want?" And when he turns his head, he sees his brother has the window open, and he's talking to someone. So he gets up out of bed, and he walks over to the window. But he doesn't see a person. He sees this owl just right outside the window staring in. And he's like, "Come on, brother, let's get back in bed, because if mother finds you, up, she'll get mad." And his brother goes, "No, there's a lady outside. She's beautiful. She wants me to come play. She wants me to come outside." And he's like, "What are you talking about? It's just an owl. Go back to bed." So finally he gets his brother back in his bed. And he goes back and he lays down. He falls asleep, and a couple hours later, he awakes to screaming. And as he jumps up out of bed, he looks over and he can see his brother is getting pulled out of the window by this owl. So he starts screaming for his mom, and she comes running in the bedroom. And when she sees all this, she grabs onto her cross, her rosary, and she starts saying prayers. And eventually, whatever this was, it dropped and let go of the brother. And she ran and grabbed him. And he said several weeks after that, when they would walk from place to place, they would often see this owl overhead, flying above them as if it was following his brother. Now, this next story takes place not too far from this area. There was this man named Jose. Jose said that when he was younger, he remembers one night awaking to the sound of his mom calling him. So he got up out of bed and he goes into the front room. And he said his mom was standing there and she was like crying. And he said, "What's wrong, Mama? Like, what's wrong?" And she goes, "Why haven't you gone outside and chopped firewood for the fireplace?" And he goes, "But Mom, it's the middle of the night. It's dark. I don't want to go outside." And she goes, "Well, don't you love your mother? Like, don't you want to go outside and get firewood so we can stay warm?" So he says, "Okay, Mother, I'll go and get my shoes." So he starts going back to his bedroom. And as he's running around looking for his shoes, his mom comes in the room and is like, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, you told me to go outside and chop firewood." And she goes, "I did not. I've been asleep." And that's when all of a sudden she looked scared. And she grabbed Jose and she grabbed his brothers and sisters and brought them into the bedroom and locked the door. And the next morning, when they came out of the bedroom, the front door was wide open and there were what looked like little bird prints going out the door. And he said after that, his mother every night would lock the windows, would make them sleep in her bedroom because she was terrified this thing would come back and take
up late to go to work, and as much as you're trying to rush out the door, you keep coming back in the house looking for things because you keep forgetting them. I will be changing people's names for privacy reasons, and let's get into it. Cynthia woke up and she was extremely late for work, but thank God she had always pre-planned the night before. She always had things laid out. She had her keys where she needed them. She had her shoes. She had her clothes. Everything was laid out for her. But for some odd reason, where she had left her house keys, they weren't there on the counter. So she's looking for her house keys that she can't find, and then she finds them in one of her shoes. Now, she couldn't understand why her house keys were in one of her shoes, but she just kind of dismissed it. She went outside, turned on her car, and came back inside. And as she's looking for her purse that was just now next to the door, it was not there anymore. Her purse went missing. So then she's like, this cannot be happening to me. The one day that I don't need to be late for work for this meeting, I can't find my purse. What is going on? So she starts looking for her purse all over the house, and she finds the purse in the bathroom, which she didn't understand why it was in the bathroom, but in her mind, maybe she was stressing out from trying to get out the door, and she probably put it in the bathroom looking for her keys. That's what she assumed that it was. She grabs her coat, she grabs her purse, she's running out the door, she gets in the car, and as she's pulling out the driveway, her husband's yelling at her for her to stop, and he has her purse in his hand. And she looked down at the seat next to her, and she's like, the purse isn't there. So what did I grab? And she looks at her husband like, maybe I'm just losing it, maybe, I don't know, maybe something's going on, maybe I'm just seeing things. So tells her husband, there's no possible way my purse was left inside the house. I just grabbed it. And he tells her, maybe there's something that's stopping you from leaving right now. Maybe there's something in the road that is trying to prevent you from getting hurt. I don't know. Maybe the universe is trying to tell you something. And of course, she just brushes him off. She's like, no. I just have to go to work. And he tells her, please drive safe. Please drive safe. There's a reason why things are happening to you right now. And of course, she's not listening to him. He's like, well, just call me on your way to work. And she's like, yeah, I'll call you on my way to work. She did not call him on her way to work. And down the highway, she hits traffic, and it's bumper to bumper. She sticks out her head out the window, and she sees this miles long of traffic. And of course, she's like, I'm never going to make it to this meeting. There's no possible way. So she calls her boss on the phone, and she tells her boss, listen, I'm not going to be able to make it for another hour or an hour and a half to work. And the boss completely tells her, you know what? It's okay. Are you okay? And she's like, why? Because we just got word that someone from work just got into a serious car accident in the same road that you drive to come to work. And we thought it was you. She's like, what do you mean? She's like, apparently someone at work got hit by a truck and their car flipped over. And we would thought it was you because apparently the car was like yours, but it ended up being somebody else at work. And she's like, really? And he's like, yeah, you know what? Take your time. We moved the meeting down another 2 hours, so don't even worry about it. And she's just sitting there in disbelief because her husband's words came to her mind, reminding her that maybe the universe is trying to stop you from getting to work for a reason. There's something going on for a reason. And she said in her mind, the reason was that truck hitting that car, and that could have been her. So what do you guys think that was that kept taking her purse and taking her keys in the house? Do you think that was the universe or something else?
Glossing up so I can run this mouth. Now focus. Scary story time. In Appalachia, if someone knocks on your door after midnight, do not answer it, even if they know your name. So it's 2003. Dana had just broke up with her boyfriend that they'd been dating like long term or whatever, and her brother helped her find this little house on the edge of a holler. He just said that it was like way out in the middle of nowhere, a long driveway, a cute little house. It had 2 bay windows with a little like etched in front door, you know, it wasn't creepy at all. She's living there, everything's going great, until one night she's watching TV, she's up late, and she hears a knock at the door. And she said it wasn't even like a wham wham wham, it was just like a normal like. She kind of looks towards the door like, what the hell? Like, she didn't hear a car or anything pull up. So she's kind of freaked out already, but then it says, open the door, Dana. Just really plain, like he knew her or something. She did not recognize the voice. Freaked out. I'm freaked out listening to it. So she gets up to go like see who's at the door, and she's just kind of standing at the door trying to figure out what to do next. And he says, I can hear you breathing, Dana. What? So she steps over to one of the little bay window things, and she can see back in this way, and she sees that it is a man, and he is standing there with his forehead on her door, and he's leaned forward. She said he was like muddy looking. He had on overalls, like a jean overall, bare feet, no shoes whatsoever. There's no car anywhere to be found. She runs over, gets her phone, calls her brother because he lived like 15 minutes up the road, and she knew he could get to her quicker than the cops could. So as she's talking to her brother, she's whispering, you know, like there's some weirdo on the front porch, like come help quick, I don't know who this guy is. He tells her, the guy on the porch through the door, hang up the phone. Sir, no. She yells back, I'm not hanging up. I'm not hanging up the phone. He starts laughing. He's laughing and tapping his foot on the front porch. Her brother got there in 12 minutes. So this went on for 12 minutes. Right before her brother gets there, like right before he's about to turn down the drive, that thing pushes off the door, then walks off the porch, and she watches him just like walk into the wood line. Brother runs up to the front porch. She opens the door. She tells him he just ran off into the woods. The brother goes off into the woods to see if he can find the guy or whatever. There are muddy prints, just like they just appeared at her door, and then you could follow them off the porch, but none coming onto the porch. And the only thing that he did to the porch was he unscrewed the light bulb just a little bit, not fully, but enough that where it wouldn't come on. Yeah, someone knocks on your door, don't open it. Why are skinwalkers being redacted on the search bar? Lip gloss on so I can run this mouth. Now focus. Scary story time. So in case you haven't seen, there's this video of a woman from South Dakota that woke up from a snowstorm, and she had found all of these footprints outside of her door. But the weird thing is the footprints are like this, like backwards. I'm gonna put them up here, right here, okay? So apparently people are saying that it's a doin'. I'd never heard of a doin'. A doin' is like this cryptid thing from Trinidad and Tobago. Its feet are on backwards. It's childlike. It has no face, wears a huge straw hat. But that's not the main concern for me. Look at this. Why are they redacting things after the word skinwalker? What is going on? Is there something else that we don't know about that they don't want us to know about? So the lady in that video from South Dakota, she follows these footsteps and they just stop. Which I wouldn't have followed them, but okay, she's brave. She follows them out, they stop. Now, some people are saying that it's actually like crossing back and forth and it's just like normal footsteps, but it's strange because they're bare feet. And even if that's the case, who's walking around barefooted and coming up to her door and then turning around and leaving? And why are they so small? And I don't know, which freaks me out because I did a video in the Fright Night Files about this kid seeing what he thought was a mimic in the house, trying to get him to go outside. But is this like what they're redacting? Is this a new thing? Have skinwalkers leveled up? Is this like Skinwalker 2.0? What is going on? I don't know. What do you guys think about it? But more importantly, why is this redacted? This bothers me more than aliens. I'm not even kidding. I'm not even kidding, because mimics and skinwalkers are terrifying. What was trying to get in that woman's house? I need somebody to find out and tell me. I need to know.
I was 20 at the time, and I did not believe in the paranormal. It was about a week before Christmas, and my uncle was in the hospital. Things were not good. So that night, I decided to spend the night with my grandparents. I went to work and then headed straight over after. There was an air mattress in the living room waiting for me, and my grandparents were already in bed. I turned on the TV, got comfy, and started watching. Time passed, and I got to the point where I was drifting in and out of sleep. Suddenly, a hand tapped me near my shoulder, and a voice said, "Hey, wake up." I rolled over, adjusting my eyes, and saw my grandma turning the corner and heading down the hallway. I looked at the clock, 1:17 a.m. Something felt wrong. So I got up and followed her. When I reached the hallway, she was already at the other end, walking into my grandparents' room. I followed and peeked inside. It was very dark, darker than the rest of the house. My grandparents were both lying in bed. I walked up and put my hand on my grandmother. Are you okay? She turned with a confused look and said, Yes, I'm fine. What's wrong? I told her how she had gotten up, tapped me, and told me to wake up. She assured me she had been asleep the whole time. I apologized and started walking back down the hallway. The phone rang. Since my grandmother was already awake, she answered it. It was my cousin, crying. I just sat and waited. After she hung up, my grandmother said, Your cousin was just woken up by her mom, your aunt. My aunt had passed away from an illness about 4 years before. She was my grandmother's sister, and they looked very similar. By then, everyone was awake. My grandmother made coffee, and we all sat around the table. My grandmother asked me what had happened, and I retold the whole story in detail, even describing the nightgown she was wearing and the odd bluish-white glow it had. Then the phone rang again. It was my cousin telling my grandmother that my uncle had passed. Oh, I just got goosebumps so bad. My grandmother simply said, I know already. Everyone decided to try to get a little rest before heading to the hospital to handle everything. We woke early and went to the hospital. I didn't go into the room. I let everyone else mourn and have their moment. My grandfather was gathering my uncle's belongings and placing them into a box. Eventually, he brought it out to me and said, Just hold on to this, okay? So I went back to the waiting room with the box and began looking through it. There was my uncle's wedding ring, a necklace, and then I noticed it. His watch. The one he wore every day. It was a Mickey Mouse watch, the Mickey's arms as the hands. It had stopped at 1:17 a.m. I walked over to my grandfather and asked, What time did Uncle die? He looked at me and said, 1:17 a.m. What? So the aunt's ghost who passed away 4 years prior wakes him up at 1:17 a.m. Then a few minutes later, he gets a call from his cousin saying, My mom who passed away 4 years ago just woke me up. And then minutes later, they get a call from another cousin saying, my dad just passed away. So like the aunt's husband had just passed away, and it was at 1:17 a.m. The watch had stopped at 1:17 a.m. This is crazy. Like, I've got so many goosebumps. Let me know in the comments what you guys think, or if any of you have ever experienced anything like this, send me your story.
You can't make this stuff up. Might have known the story of real-life boogeyman.
Let's read a true and scary story about the Appalachian Mountains. The story I'm about to share happened to me when I was 14 in the summer of 2021. I was spending time at an extended stay Grippy Socks home, a residential mental hospital. It was in Louisville, Tennessee, in the Appalachian Mountains. The Behavioral Health Treatment Center used to be a summer camp, so there were a bunch of cabins where the patients stayed. We were pretty isolated. The closest cabin was over a large hill and about a 5-minute walk away. Not too far, but too far for what I heard to have been another patient. Back then, I had no idea what flesh pedestrians or mimics were. I was blissfully unaware, and I didn't understand why one of the biggest rules was to never go outside at night. Well, I do now. That place was unsavory, to say the least. There were patients with a wide range of different issues. My cabin was for people with more manageable conditions, like eating disorders or bipolar disorder, compared to other cabins that housed patients experiencing psychosis or schizophrenia. As you can imagine, there was a lot of heavy energy. It felt like a magnet for activity. One night, we were walking up to the bathhouse to use the restroom and get water before locking up for the night. I usually stayed toward the back of the group because it was easier for me to keep an eye on everyone. I knew I was in the back. I always was, which is why I still can't explain what happened next. I heard someone walking behind me. It wasn't an echo. It wasn't my imagination. I heard the rocks crunching under their steps. I assumed it was my cabin mate, Emma, so I called out behind me. Emma, come on. Coming, she responded. She sounded close. Off, but close. Almost like a recording. But then I looked ahead of me and I saw Emma's silhouette walking in front of me, about 50 feet ahead, illuminated by the light. My stomach dropped. I didn't look back. I sprinted down the hill, nearly tripping over rocks and roots, and leapt up the stairs faster than I had ever moved in my life. All I remember is everyone running after me.
Later that night, I heard footsteps on the porch outside of the cabin. I didn't acknowledge it. I remembered something my mom once told me about ghosts, that acknowledging them makes them continue. So I followed her advice. But now I question whether it was a ghost or something else, a mimic. Thank you so much, JC, for sending this story in. To me, this does sound like a mimic. I think especially since you said it sounded like a recording, that's something that I feel like is so commonly reported, at least when I read stories about mimics. Also, of this type of facility being in cabins in the Appalachian Mountains, absolutely insane to me. Like, I cannot imagine going to get like behavioral health treatment and being around ghosts. Like, that would make it so much worse. But again, thank you so much for sharing this story with me. If you guys have any stories you'd like me to read, please email them to me and I'll catch them if I can. And I will see you in the next one.
Hello and welcome back to a series of spooky stories, The Haunted Tea Spill. This series is brought to you by all things spooky and ungodly amounts of paranormal activity. Featuring my necklace, again, it comes in a set with a bracelet. Anyways, on to the story now. When I was younger, something really terrifying happened to me. For this story to make sense, I'm sensitive to ghosts. One night I was alone in my room, quietly crying because at the time I felt alone and was recovering mentally from CSA. That is so sad, and I am so sorry that happened to you. I hope whoever did it rots in hell for eternity. So I stayed awake while watching the TV as the dish cable sign bounced around the screen. Then for comfort, I started to whisper to my dead grandfather who usually comes to my aid when I need him, but this night was different. I started to feel a presence lay beside me and I believed it was him, and I greeted him as I relaxed. It began to rock me slowly, which was normal at first, until their hands started to caress my butt, and then I knew that it wasn't my grandfather. What the fuck? Before I could move, my body felt heavy and frozen in the place, then the touching became violent. What? I tried to scream for my mom, but my voice was stuck or something, so tears ran down my face as all I could do was watch the TV icon move. And that's how I knew that I was awake and not dreaming, because it was consistent. I felt the thing run its hands down to my ankles, and before I could register what was happening, it yanked me upwards as I was hanging upside down. But everything was in slow motion, but also felt harsh and fast. I don't fucking like this. I don't like it at all. My eyes widen as I see a tall, dark figure that reeked of hatred and malice was holding my ankle while looking at me, and I started to not breathe as he growled at me while saying nothing. After 5 minutes of being like that, he dropped me, which was in slow motion, and as soon as I touched the mattress, I ran out of my room and into my mom's room next door. I was finally able to scream and cry when I entered, and my mother was lost. She kept asking what was wrong, and I kept repeating man in my room and that it was a bad spirit. She found nothing in there when she looked, but still prayed over it and blessed me. To this day, I can remember it as clear as day, and it still makes me shiver. As it fucking should. I know you may not believe me, but this felt and was real because the bruise on my ankle proved so. I ain't saying shit. I'm not saying I don't believe. That's scary as fuck. Whether or not it was a dream, whatever. It felt real enough, and you had a fucking bruise. So, Jesus. That's freaky as fuck. That's terrifying. I'm also incredibly sorry that you went through what you went through. And then that after, as you're grieving, going through such traumatic events already. Jesus. Anyway, rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the least scary, creepy, spooky, 10 being the most. If you have a story of your own that you want to submit, you can do so on the link tree in my profile. I'll see y'all the next episode. Stay spooky, friends.
Late on the morning of June 27th, 1957, a 25-year-old Austrian mountain climber named Kurt Diemberger plunged his ice axe into the deep snow ahead of him and then used the axe to pull himself up and over a big ice clump. Kurt was totally physically and mentally exhausted by this point and only wanted to stop for like 2 seconds just to catch his breath. But he knew that was just not an option. Kurt and his climbing partner, a 32-year-old man named Herman Buell, were climbing one of the tallest mountains in the world, called Chogalisa, which is located in northern Pakistan. And they were doing this climb all alone. It was just those two, and they had virtually no safety equipment. Now, for reference, this was not normal. Anybody who climbed Chogalisa did so with Sherpas and guides and oxygen masks. I mean, this was a dangerous climb, and so serious measures had to be taken to ensure it was safe. But Kurt and Herman felt like, that takes all the fun out of mountain climbing. There has to be, like real risk here for this to be worth doing. And also, critically, Kurt and Herman were well aware of the fact that if they successfully climbed Chogalisa with no safety equipment, so what they were planning to do, that would be a new world record, because nobody had ever done that before on this mountain. And so that felt like a really cool reason to go for this. And when they began their journey a few days earlier, when they began the climb, it had still felt like a great idea because the weather forecast was perfect for the rest of the time they expected to be on the mountain. However, earlier that morning, Kurt had turned around to talk to Herman, and he noticed off to the south was a kind of ominous dark cloud making its way toward them. Now, obviously, when you're on the ground and you look up and you see a dark cloud, you think, okay, it might storm, or it's actively storming. You know, maybe it's rain, maybe it's snow, but, you know, it's probably not a big deal unless it's like a tsunami or a hurricane or something, but dark clouds are just not really a big deal. But when you are 4 miles up one of the most treacherous mountains in the world, you got no other people with you, you got no safety equipment, and you see a dark cloud coming your way, yeah, that's terrifying. Because storms have been killing mountain climbers basically for as long as mountain climbing has been a thing. And so when Kurt and Herman saw this cloud, even though the weather forecast had been good, they knew that there was a real chance a storm was going to hit them before they reached the summit. And so they had to make a choice. Abort the mission now, go back to camp, and potentially give up on this climb altogether, thereby not getting the world record. Or they could risk it and just try to speed their way up to the summit before the storm arrived. And because Kurt and Herman were actually within about 1,000 feet to the summit when Kurt noticed this dark cloud, they decided, you know what, let's just risk it. We can get up there to the summit, get this thing done before this cloud ever gets to us. And so that was the decision they made. And it was also why Kurt and Herman knew there was no way they could slow down even for a second, because basically this was a sprint to the top. And if they slowed down, they might die. So even though Kurt was totally exhausted from trying to make this last push, this is why he knew he could not stop. Stopping basically equaled death, because the storm will catch up and you're screwed. And so, panting and exhausted with the wind whipping up like mad, Kurt and Herman just kept moving up that mountain as fast as they possibly could. But when they got about maybe 500 feet away from the summit, so they're really close at this point, something changed. As Kurt was about to bring his axe back down into the snow to, pull himself up one more step, he suddenly realized he couldn't see the mountain in front of him. Like there was nothing. It was just pure white all around him. He couldn't even see the sky. It was like he was just in this void all of a sudden. And the reason for this is because that dark cloud had caught up to them. They were literally inside of the cloud. That's why they couldn't see anything. And so from behind Kurt, even though he can't see anything, he could hear Herman desperately screaming up to him, "Hey, we've got to turn around right now!" And Kurt obviously knew, yeah, it's too late. We are not going to make the summit. We got to go. Kurt knew Herman was right. I mean, this is an absolute crisis. If the storm that's basically brewing all around them didn't kill them, certainly the result of the storm would. I mean, all the snow that's going to land is going to fill in their tracks, and it would be nearly impossible to find your way back down again. And so this was like, we totally miscalculated, turn around and get out of here as fast as possible. And so that's what Kurt and Herman began to do. As fast as they could, they began going down the mountain, following along their tracks they had left on the way up. And pretty quickly, Kurt and Herman began making serious progress. And so Kurt was starting to feel optimistic that, maybe they had managed to escape this just in time. But right at that moment, the ground underneath Kurt began to vibrate. Then Kurt looked down, and even though his visibility was basically nothing, he could tell from his legs that the ground was basically shifting underneath him. And then suddenly Kurt felt this feeling that you get when you're on like a carnival ride and you're dropped, that feeling in your stomach that you're falling. He got that because the ground underneath him just gave way. It was an avalanche. And so in absolute desperation, Kurt, who knows he's about to be sucked into an avalanche, he just jumped like as far away from the mountain as he possibly could, kind of at an angle to the right, like he was leaping up and out of the avalanche and over to the right. But you gotta remember, he's on this really steep slope. This is not like jumping on flat ground where you jump up and just return to where you jumped from. He's on a slope. So when he jumped out and to the right, it was like he was jumping off a building. He fell something like 30 or so feet before he hit the ground again. But when Kurt hit the ground, he kind of expected to be gobbled up by the snow and keep being sucked down the mountain. But he wasn't. He hit the ground and didn't move. And then he kind of sat up and he looked around and he realized he had successfully jumped out of the avalanche. He had done it. He saved himself. And so he began looking around. The visibility is still terrible, but it's a little bit better because now the avalanche has basically gone down the mountain. The storm is kind of passing, and so the visibility is decent. And, Kurt, he's looking around, screaming out for Herman. He doesn't see him. And then it's like suddenly the visibility just opened up, and Kurt was able to look to his left where the avalanche had gone. And as he was looking, he saw what looked impossible. Basically, the land where they had been walking down this mountain was gone. It was like the avalanche had removed that part of the mountain. And so Kurt is basically laying in the snow on the edge of a new cliff where the avalanche had basically broken away the mountain. And so he's looking into this crevasse where the avalanche went and thinking, I can't believe how lucky I am, but I gotta go find Herman. And so Kurt stands up, and he's pretty battered from this 30-foot fall, but he's got adrenaline pumping through him, so he feels pretty good. And he scrambles his way 30 feet back up the mountain to this ridgeline where he originally jumped out of the avalanche, hoping when he got up there that he might find some sign of where Herman went to, because they were pretty close together when the avalanche started. But when he got up there was no sign of Herman, and he turned around and looked back down the mountain, and he couldn't see Herman anywhere. But when he turned back around, looking now back up the mountain, so in the direction of where they had originally intended to hike, and then where they had to come back down from when they were in the cloud, he noticed that he could see very easily their tracks, he and Herman's tracks. And so with his eyes, he just kind of tracked these tracks all the way down the mountain to where he was. And as he did this, he noticed something. At first, it was like his brain couldn't compute what he was seeing. But after a moment, he knew. Here is a photo of what Kurt would have seen. However, keep in mind, this was not a photo Kurt took, and it's also from a slightly farther away perspective. But conceptually, this really is what Kurt saw that told him what happened to Herman. So in this photo, you can see the mountain and the summit's at the top, and there's a trail that goes straight down and then appears to diverge, where there's tracks that go to the left from our perspective, the viewer's perspective. They go to the left around that cliff line, and the other set of footprints that disappear off the cliff. Well, if you haven't figured it out yet, the footprints that go to the left are Kurt's footprints. He just magically jumped and landed on the absolute edge of where this avalanche was going to happen, and Herman is the other set of prints. And so when that avalanche started, there was nowhere for Herman to go, and he was sucked into that avalanche and dragged over 1,000 feet down the mountain, and his body was never recovered.
Somebody actually submitted a spooky video this time, claiming that they saw a creature called Tibolum. Now, they sent absolutely no context but the video, so I did some research. This person claimed to have been walking in Lucia at night when they suddenly ran into this creature. Now, before I show you guys the video, because I got you, let me tell you a little bit about Tibolum. According to Lucian folklore, Tibolum refers to a small humanoid supernatural being. We'll describe it as short or child-sized, human-like, but definitely not human, fast, sneaky, and mischievous, often seen at night in the bush near old roads or abandoned places. Similar to what other islanders might call duendes, bush spirits, little people / forest beings. Lucia, the term gets used loosely, but it usually refers to a spirit or an entity, not an animal. Based off that video, I don't know what animals look like that. I'm gonna play the clip at the very end of this video. But everything about this video was absolutely horrifying. The sound that the creature was making, which did sound very childlike, to the visual, like, what the actual heck was that? I'm about to play the clip. You may not want to watch this one at night or before you're about to go to bed. First of all, the sound. Sounds like a crying baby in the middle of the road outside in the night. And it looked like it just dropped to the ground. Yeah, unfortunately, that wasn't AI. This was real life. I wish more of y'all would actually record these spooky experiences. Really wish more people caught paranormal stuff like that on camera more often. If you've seen something though, or you have a good video, make sure you DM it to me either right here or on TikTok. But I don't know, you guys, what do you guys make of that video? Let me know in the comments. And if you're from Lucia, have you ever encountered something like this?
This story was sent into my email, and if you have any scary stories, paranormal experiences, or ghost stories that you want to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. This person sent in 3 separate stories, so we are in for it today. This is my mother's story, and out of all of the stories in my family, this one scares me the most. When my mom was younger, she grew up in a house that everyone quietly agreed was wrong. At first, it was typical stuff you hear about with haunted houses. Objects moving when no one was around, things never being where you left them, that uneasy feeling of being watched, especially at night. No, yeah, just super normal haunted house things. But then it escalated. No, of course it did. Almost every night, my mom would wake up to her bed shaking violently. Not gently and not like vibration. Like something was grabbing it and rattling it back and forth. She'd open her eyes, frozen in fear, and that's when she would see him. A cowboy. He would come out of her closet slowly. I'm getting chills. Like he had been standing there waiting. What do you mean? He looked like something straight out of an old movie. a Midwestern-style cowboy dressed in worn clothes, hat pulled low, but there was nothing comforting or familiar about him. Listen, I'm gonna just say this as somebody who has read cowboy romances. A little cowboy romance ghost. Kind of cute. As her bed continued to shake, he wouldn't walk. He would float. Oh, that gave me the ick. He'd drift out of her bedroom, down the hallway, disappearing into the darkness of the house like he owned it. This didn't happen once. It happened a handful of times. It happened for years. Night after night, the same routine, the same shaking, the same figure. And the worst part, it never felt neutral. Whatever was in that house didn't feel curious or lost. It felt malevolent. It felt like it wanted us to know it was there. Second story starts. This one's short, but it always stuck with me. When I was a baby, my parents stayed at a hotel that was known to be haunted. My aunt was with us, and one night my parents decided to walk around the hotel with a spirit box while my aunt stayed behind in the room with me. Okay. They didn't get much activity at first, just static, nothing clear. But as they were walking towards the room, something suddenly came through the spirit box and said very clearly, "Shh." They froze. When they opened the door to the room, everything was quiet. I was fast asleep. And my aunt was sitting there calmly like nothing unusual had happened. Oh, I don't like that at all. Later they learned that the hotel used to be a hospital, and many people believe spirits of nurses still linger there. My parents like to think that whatever said shush that night was a nurse. Not trying to scare anyone, just keeping things quiet, watching over a sleeping baby. The last story starts when I was around 4 years old. Something happened that my family still talks about. One day I was sitting by the window, just playing quietly, when suddenly I got excited. I started pointing outside and saying, "Grandma, Grandma," over and over. My mom rushed over confused. She looked outside expecting to see someone walking up or standing in the yard, but there was no one there. At first she thought nothing of it. Kids say strange things all the time. But a few hours later the phone rang. Oh, I don't like where this is going. My mom answered and learned that her grandmother had passed away. The timing was exact. No. I had never been told she was sick, and I didn't know she was dying, but I had recognized her anyway. My family believes she came to see me one last time before she moved on. Oh.
Idaho's one of those strange places that people don't really go to. You know, it's up there, situated in the Pacific Northwest. Most people just drive through the northern portion of the state, and you almost kind of forget that that state even exists. In the southern portion of Idaho, it's this very remote area, and a lot of strange things occur here. Now, there's a place known as the Ouija Mountains, and the Native Americans have this legend about something they call the sheep snatchers. Now, the sheep snatchers, they believed, were this lost tribe that lived up in the mountains. They were supposedly cannibals, and from time to time, when they were very hungry, it said that they would come down from the mountains and they would steal livestock from some of the local tribes. And there was even a story back in the 1800s. These 5 hunters, they go into the Ouija Mountains and they never returned. So their family was worried about them. They form a search party. They end up finding them up in the mountains in this small cabin that's locked from the inside. The windows are locked. And they find these 5 men, all deceased, with their heads having been completely smashed. There have been stories of sheep herders or sheep farmers who have seen these men come down from the mountains that look like very tall men wearing the skeleton of a sheep's head or a sheep's skull. And they come down, they steal sheep, they throw them over their shoulders, and they carry them back up the mountain. Do you have any strange stories from Idaho?
On the morning of July 16th, 1999, John F. Kennedy Jr. kissed his wife, Carolyn Bessette, goodbye after making up after a fight they had previously. By that night, both of their bodies would be at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. The year's 1963. A little boy saluted his father's casket as they laid him to rest, his mom Jackie standing beside him. All eyes on one of the world's most public families, and the entire world would now watch that little boy, John F. Kennedy Jr., grow up before their eyes, because his role in America's most legendary political dynasty had now begun. By the late 1980s, John F. Kennedy Jr. wasn't only the most famous man in America, he was American royalty and the world's most eligible bachelor. His entire life, he had grown up carrying around this pressure to carry on his father's legacy, given that now he wasn't only the son of a former president, but the world looked at him almost like a royal son to all of them, to the millions of people watching. There was a very specific media fixation with the Kennedy family overall, but especially with John F. Kennedy Jr. There was a moment in 1988 when he was 27 years old where he's standing in front of the podium talking about his uncle and his father. And even though at the time he was still in law school, he was in no sort of political office, only pretty much being famous for being JFK's son, that moment captures everything you need to know about the kind of person that he was. The crowd was going absolutely wild. Women are screaming, cameras are flashing, he's standing there speaking with this sort of confidence and warmth. That was who John F. Kennedy Jr. was, and the public went crazy over him. It was a few months after that People magazine named him the sexiest man alive, selling more copies of that issue than that magazine ever had. John F. Kennedy Jr. failed the bar exam twice after graduating from law school in 1989. He passed the third time, but eventually quit law and launched a political magazine called George, speculating rumors of him possibly running for office. And for as much as he was in the public eye, he didn't necessarily speak publicly too much, so there was this sort of mystery to him that only drew people into him more. And one of the biggest mysteries about him that intrigued people the most was his love life. Before meeting Carolyn Bessette, he dated some of the biggest names in the decade, including Madonna, Sarah Jessica Parker, and Cindy Crawford. But the ex-girlfriend that people remember the most is actress Daryl Hannah. The two of them met briefly in their teenage years, but it wasn't until they met again in 1988 at a wedding that their relationship really began, and the two of them were in an off and on relationship for the next 5 years. But it was in the year 1992 that everything changed when John F. Kennedy Jr. walked into a fitting room at Calvin Klein. Standing there waiting to help him was a 26-year-old publicist with blonde hair, piercing blue eyes. Her name was Carolyn Bessette. Carolyn Bessette was born in New York. She was the youngest of 3 daughters, and when she was so young, her parents got divorced. She moved with her mother and her older twin sisters, Lauren and Lisa, to Connecticut. In high school, classmates voted her the ultimate beautiful person in the yearbook, and she was just the kind of girl that you would see walking down the street and then never be able to forget her. But she wasn't only pretty, she was smart, she was ambitious, she was magnetic. Carolyn enrolled at Boston University to study education. She briefly tried modeling and even appeared on a cover of a student calendar called The Girls of BU, but after graduation in 1988, she kind of took a different path, promoting nightclubs in Boston. It sounds random, but that job taught Carolyn how to work a room, how to read people, how to make someone feel special, how to get random strangers to trust her. And then in 1989, at 23 years old, she was hired as a saleswoman at Calvin Klein's boutique in Boston. A Calvin Klein executive noticed Carolyn's grace, her style, her presence, and she really liked what she saw. Because of that, she was transferred to the company's Manhattan headquarters and given a prestigious role, dressing VIP clients. Celebrities like Diane Sawyer trusted Carolyn to style them. A former Calvin Klein VP said, quote, she would tell them what looked good on them and advise them on how to put it all together. She sold millions of dollars of clothes over a period of time. Carolyn's style was impeccable, minimalist, timeless, effortless. She gives off very clean girl vibes, wearing Prada, simple black suits, Levi jeans, simple white shirts. She became Calvin Klein's director of publicity, then director of show productions. She also had a little thing going on with a Calvin Klein male model, and things could not be going any better for her if she tried. She's so clean girl, but she's also so cool girl. I'm obsessed with her. And she was 26 years old when she met the most famous man in America. John F. Kennedy Jr. was good friends with designer Calvin Klein, and he often wore his clothing. So that day he came in for a fitting, and Carolyn was the person assigned to help him, and their connection was pretty much immediate. Apparently he asked her for her phone number that first day after meeting, and then he invited her to join him at a gala with a group. But when Carolyn went, John was sitting with a different woman pretty much the entire night, so the two of them hardly talked. Later that same year, they saw each other at a different event, and that night they were seen together in deep conversation, talking for over an hour. Regardless, when they first met, John was still in this situationship, I guess relationship, I mean it was 5 years, but he was still with Daryl Hannah. Carolyn was kind of still seeing that male model, so it almost felt like the right person, wrong time. She and John broke up officially in 1994, around the same time that John's mother, Jackie, passed away from cancer. And this was very tough on him because he adored his mother. Shortly after Jackie passed was when him and Carolyn began dating, but dating JFK Jr. came with a price. Carolyn Bessette had been a very private girl her entire life, but now she was dating American royalty. The paparazzi were relentless. They were camping outside of her apartment. They were following her to work, to dinner, to the gym. Every outfit that she wore was making headlines. Every argument that she had with John was being photographed. Carolyn told a friend of hers that the only way to avoid the paparazzi was to leave her apartment early in the morning before they were able to get there. She complained to friends that she couldn't do a thing without it being reported on, and that even if her and John went somewhere where they thought they were alone when they couldn't see anyone, anyone. The next day, they would see a picture of them on the paper, and to Carolyn, it felt really suffocating. She didn't like it, she didn't want it, she didn't do interviews because of it. In fact, she kind of saw fame as a thief of joy, but despite the chaos, John and Carolyn were falling in love. After they had been dating for a year, John invited Carolyn to go fishing in Martha's Vineyard over the 4th of July weekend, and he ended up proposing to her while the two of them were out on the boat. And Carolyn said, I'll think about it. Didn't give him an answer for 3 weeks, slay. But eventually she agreed to marry him. John and Carolyn then decided that they were going to be planning a wedding that was going to be secret. It was going to be secret and very carefully orchestrated and planned out, so not a single reporter found out until after it happened. And they succeeded at that. On a Saturday evening in September of 1996 in Cumberland, Georgia, John and Carolyn gathered with around 40 guests, just family and close friends, no press, no paparazzi, no cameras, except for one official photographer, and then they got married. Carolyn wore a pearl white silk gown designed by Narcisco Rodriguez. She wore it with no jewelry except for her engagement ring. The ceremony was intimate. It was beautiful. Carolyn looked like a movie star. John looked like he had won the lottery. But still, no matter how dreamy their life looked, there was always the constant of them being a very much public couple. And after the wedding, the media scrutiny that they were facing got to a whole nother level. Because Carolyn wanted privacy, she always declined interviews. She never wanted to talk. So she would be reported on as if she was this cold, mean, rude person. The press turned on her and painted her out in a negative light, so much so that John then made a statement addressing this, saying that this kind of fame would be a lot to anyone, let alone someone who isn't used to it, who didn't grow up with it. So he asked the press to give his wife privacy, saying that it would be greatly appreciated. But naturally, all the things, all the noise, rumors about infidelity, disagreements about certain things, and everything being on headlines daily, it affected their marriage. And a big thing that they apparently disagreed on was children. Because under the spotlight, Carolyn felt like she was living in a fishbowl, constantly being watched, and she didn't love it, as we know. She wasn't comfortable, let alone the thought of bringing a child into this world, into a world that she didn't even feel comfortable in. She didn't want to do that, but John, on the other hand, was ready to have kids. So it was a rough patch for them, to say the least. And reportedly, the two of them began attending couples counseling in the spring of 1999. Someone close to John stated, quote, both wanted to improve their marriage. John didn't want to be one of those Kennedy men who didn't care about how his wife feels, end quote. Then came July 16th of 1999. The year prior, John had gotten his pilot's license and he had bought himself a Piper Saratoga, I think that's how you pronounce it. It's a high-performance single-engine plane, just 3 months before that July night. He was certified to fly under visual flight rules, meaning that he could only fly when the weather conditions were good and when he could see landmarks, but that night they were not. It was extremely hazy outside. John was flying the plane, and Carolyn was also there along with her older sister Lauren. They were flying to a family wedding. Apparently, a couple of days before, July 14th, Carolyn's sister Lauren had lunch with both of them because she was worried about the rocky path that they were in. So she was like, look, let's all fly to the wedding this weekend together. It'll be fun. You two can make up and just take a moment to breathe. John and Carolyn were like, okay, yeah, that would be cool. Let's go. So July 16th was supposed to be a kiss and makeup situation. Friends said that John and Carolyn had made up over the phone that morning and they were looking forward to spending the weekend together, but they never made it. Around 6:30 p.m. that night, John and Lauren left to go to the airport. Carolyn met them there. At 8:38 p.m., the FFA cleared the plane for takeoff. John was in the pilot seat. Carolyn and Lauren sat behind him, back to back with his seat. The flight should have taken 45 minutes, but conditions were not good and visibility was dropping by the minute. John lost visual reference points. Everything felt like it disappeared into the darkness. He couldn't tell up from down. It's called spatial disorientation when pilots lose sense of the position and movement that they're in. And John, although he was licensed, he wasn't experienced and he couldn't save them. At 9:41 p.m., the plane crashed into the Atlantic Ocean, approximately 7.5 miles west of Martha's Vineyard. All three of them passed on impact. When the plane didn't arrive, obviously friends and family members were concerned. By 4 a.m., the Coast Guard began searching. By 7:30 a.m., the Air Force and Coast Guard had launched 20 aircrafts and 2 boats. That afternoon, something washed up on shore. It was a headrest from the plane and a black suitcase containing Lauren's business card. The family wedding they were supposed to be attending got canceled and an extensive search occurred. On July 21st of 1999, Navy divers discovered the bodies. It was said that all 3 of them were still strapped onto their seats. John F. Kennedy Jr. was 38 years old, Carolyn Bessette Kennedy was 33 years old, and her sister Lauren was 34. The next day, the Kennedy and Bissett families scattered their ashes at sea in a private ceremony. When the investigation was completed, it was ruled that the probable cause of the accident was, quote, the pilot's failure to maintain control of the airplane during a descent over water at night, which was a result of spatial disorientation, end quote. For Americans who remembered what happened to JFK, it felt like history was repeating itself, and like the Kennedy curse had claimed yet another generation. It's really a sad story, and the Kennedy curse itself is a whole thing. Maybe I'll do a podcast episode on that. I know there's a show that just came out, I think, about this. I haven't watched the show, but I'm going to tonight. However, I have seen it all over my For You page, which is why I'm doing this video. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on this case. That is all from me today. Thank you for spending time with me. Hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.